In this final lesson in this video series, we're going to look at exporting your project to a web server and also a Windows desktop. Now, in this video, we'll not be creating an export to Android or Apple devices, but once you know how to export in one particular way, the other methods are quite similar. To prepare for the export, we need to create a series of folders. In our project that we've created so far, we created an assets folder, a scenes folder and a scripts folder. We need one other folder as a root folder called exports. So if we create a new folder, call it exports, because we're going to export all our exported files into this one single folder, because then when we back up the game folder, in this case the 2D platformer folder, all the exports that you exported will be backed up with it. It's not good practice to keep it in separate files. It keeps everything in one single folder and everything will go quite well. Now, inside this exports folder, we're going to create two more folders. One called web, because we're going to export the web export to that particular folder, and the other folder we're going to call desktop. Now that could be called anything you want, as so can the web one, but this is the ones I use and I just like to stick to a routine that I get and I've developed over the years. Okay, that's the preparation for the actual project export. Now, what we need to do, if you remember, when we first, in the very first lesson, we went into download Godot 4.4.1 from this particular place here. And if you remember, further down in the all download section, there was an export templates. We exported them templates to the same folder as we exported the game engine. Okay. So we have different downloads here, the Godot 4.41 stable, the console, the actual stable Win64 version, and we also exported the templates. Now this is where we're going to install these templates. Now if I return to our project in Godot, you'll notice our scene that we've created. In the editor menu, there is a submenu called Manage Export Templates. Click onto that. Now, in this window, export templates are missing. Install them from file. Now, there's two ways you can install these export templates. One is from the download and install. Now I've disabled that because I didn't want to be disturbed during these video presentations, but I'm going to select install from file. Now install from file will allow you to move to the actual directory drive where you've saved the export templates. In my case, it's users ccsoft downloads Godot 4.41. Now you can see that's exactly the same place that I downloaded to them to a little while ago. I'm going to select this stable export templates TPZ, and then you go to open. Now that will actually extract the templates for you. Now, when that first part's done, so it's extracted them, you can notice there's an open folder here. And what this will do, will open exactly where your templates are, and this is where the templates are kept. Okay, so that can open that folder in Windows. I'm not going to do that for now, we can do that yourself. And then we're already finished with this install the actual templates. We can close that. Now the next part is we're going to go into the export Windows desktop first of all. So we go into project, we go into export, and then this export screen is displayed. You'll notice there's an add feature here. Now in this add feature we can actually install or export to these platforms. I will give you a word of advice. The Mac OS export can only be done if you're working on a Mac, because it uses the native Xcode in Mac operating system. You can't, at this particular stage anyway, export to Mac on a PC architecture. The Android export will take quite an awful lot of setting up first before you can export to Android. iOS is the same. Linux you can export from here, but I'm going to go in this particular case to Windows Desktop for the first of all. I'll come back to the web one very soon. So Windows Desktop. Okay, first of all we need to set up the export path of our export project. So we click onto this button here, and you can see I'm going to select this folder, so desktop, and then we're going to name the file, and in this case because that's what your overall file is going to be zipped as and exported as. So click on to save. You'll notice that now appears there. In the export console wrapper, we're not going to install in export the debug, so we're okay there. We don't need PCK because that's for Android only. The architecture is very important because you need to make certain we're on 64-bit. But if you're only running a 32-bit machine, Windows 10 or something before, you can actually export to 32-bit architecture. The texture format, don't be concerned with, we're okay on that one. The core design we're not concerned with for now. The icon, if you wanted to put an icon inside there, you would need to do so. Now an icon is appearing here, and you can do your own personalized icon. In this particular case, the Godot icon will suffice. Forget about the wrapper icon. The file version, we can leave that blank for now because it's the first one we're going to be doing. The product version, the company name, I'm going to put Cool Studios in there. You can put whatever you want in there. And the actual product name, 2D platformer. File description you can leave for now. Copyright, we're okay for that for now. And then we don't need to go to remote deploy. So once them options are done, make certain you click into resources tab, and then you can see there's a few choices here. We are going to select export all resources in the playlist. That's all we need from that one. The patches, we don't need anything. The features, we don't need anything. Encryption, we don't need that unless you want to encrypt it yourself. Script is okay. So we go back to options. You can see that runnable there. It's very important because we can run that in the Godot engine if you really wanted to as a test. Okay, now it says here The RC edit tool must be configured in the editor settings. Export Windows RC edit to change the icon or app information. So because we got this warning, because any kind of warnings, red or yellow, it doesn't make much difference. It will cause problems when you're trying to export it. Now, if we get an error, as we got here, or a warning, the RC edit tool must be configured in the editor settings. Export Windows RC edit. The RC edit is basically if you want to actually create your own icon. We're not doing that for now. So if you go to application, modify resources and deselect that, you'll notice that error message has gone because we're not going to try to edit the icon. So that is all you need to set up just for now. If we go to export project, and it will export the project into this folder here, and you'll notice that's already set up in the same place there. We've already named it 2D platform. Now this is going to export this as an .exe file. You can run on any platform that runs exe files. We're not going to export with debug, so we go to save, and then that exports to here. So in the desktop, you'll notice that we got two files. The PC key file, it automatically generates anyway. So if I double click onto this 2D platformer, you'll see that the game now runs as a standalone exe file. So we can start, and then we can test that. See, everything is exactly what please. Now I changed the level 2 just for this example to just say return to main menu, please wait, and then after a couple of seconds it goes back to the main menu. Okay, so that is the Windows application desktop already done. So if we go to project, sorry, there we said before, export, but this time we go to add and we select HTML5 or Web 5. HTML5 is meant to run on a web server. Now to test this inside of Godot, which you can do, you would use this button here, but we'll cover that as we go along. So this time we're going into the web, so click onto web, it's runnable. Then exactly the same type of thing. The first thing we need to do is go on to the export path, and you'll notice that it's still on the desktop, so we can click on this up arrow to go back, double click web. It's 2D platform, but what we need to do, we don't call it that in this instance. We need to call it index.html. Now if any of you have done web design, you'll notice that the index.html file is the very first root file in any kind of website that opens the web pages. Okay, it's the root node that actually opens up and controls all of the pages. So we're going to save that first. So you'll see now, so when we export it, we'll export to that as a HTML file, and I'll come back to that very soon. Okay, then we go to the same thing as last time. We need to set these settings up, so we don't need to do anything from that. We can actually complete that. Don't do for the mobile one, there's no need for now. Export icon, we don't need to bother with that for now. You can see adaptive, we can just do adaptive from there because we're okay on that. We're not too concerned with anything from there. Progressive web app, we're not too concerned with, we can leave that for now. And when that's complete, you go to resources. Again, similar to the Windows desktop, we're going to export all resources for the project. We're going to go to patches, nothing in there, nothing in features, nothing in encryption unless you want to encrypt the file, of course. Go back to options, and then we can export this project now with these settings. So export project. We're already going to call it index.html. It's going to be saved in the 2D platformer export web folder. We're going to not export with debug, so click to save, and that should be so inside the web folder we've got all these. Now this is important. You'll notice we created this as a index HTML. What we need to do now, we need to actually zip this up, all these files here, and because we've got an index HTML, okay, inside the zip we can call the zip the actual 2D platformer. So select each file, left click the top, shift left click the bottom, right click, compress to zip file. Okay, now we can rename this now, the zip file, 2D platformer, because this is what we are going to export or upload to itch.io. The next thing we need to do is go to a hosting website. Now I use itch.io, okay, the itch.io website. Now to use this website to actually upload to it and host your games, you will need to register for an account. Create a new project. I'm going to put title in there, 2D platformer. This URL you don't need to change at all. You should upload a cover image, but I'm not going to do that just for now. You can do that yourself. A short description or tagline, it is optional. This is very important. The downloadable, a kind of project. Now if you're creating an offline, which we do for the Windows project, we would create this part here. You can notice there's a few different ones. All that we're going to use in this one is downloadable, because it's the Windows desktop, and HTML. I'm going to do the HTML one first, and then you can see it could be played in the browser. I'm going to click on release status. I'm going to put it on development, but as and when you progress, you can put it for release. Now this is where you can put your pricing in there. You can decide whatever you want to be paid for it. Now a good way as an introduction on this is not to put a price on it, to give the option to the users of either downloading your game for free, or if they can donate as well. So I've just put $2 just for now, so they can get the game for free if they want to, but if they want to donate some money to do, they can do. Now the upload files here are the same as what we created earlier. This is important. Uploading the files in a web, you need to make certain you go to the place where you actually saved your project. In our case, if you remember, was My Godot 4 project, 2D platformer, export, web, and you actually select the compressed zip folder, not the index file, the compressed zip folder. Now what itch.io will do, it will check the inside of this folder for you to see whether there's an index file there. Okay, so give that time to actually upload. This is like a web base, so I'm not going to choose any one of these. This file is playable in the browser. Now that's very important because you're actually wanting to do the HTML5 online. The viewport dimensions, if you remember in Godot, we set up the project settings in the window and we did it 1024 by 600. So what we need to do is make certain that this 1024 by 600 is set here. Put a description in there. I'm going to put to be edited just for now. You can put a full description there. Genre, it's going to be a platformer in my case, but you can do, you know, whatever game you create. I normally disable comments. We're just going to put it into draft for now. We're going to go to save page. This is now where we can test the game. If we go to run game, it'll load the Godot engine up, it'll load your game up, and then away we go. This will allow the user to actually play your game in the browser in itch.io. So to go to start, now to go back to the edit game, you can go to edit game and then add other details inside there. Now, as and when you create a finished project that you really want to publish, you go into the devlog to show people what's happening. Your metadata is important to how people can find your project. The analytics is very good because that'll show you instantly how many people have viewed your game, how many people have paid for your game instantly without. Now, as you get more and more games on there, it will give you analytics of all your games inside there. Distribute, you can distribute you on a web server. It's totally up to you, in other places. So that is how to export the web version. So as a recap, we exported files from Godot and exported them in this particular case two export formats, one for PC and the other one for the web. You've seen by joining a host site, which in my case is itch.io, and then we uploaded the web version so users who find or want to find your platform again can play happily online. And then the process really, or the intention, is for them to get interested in the games that you create. Therefore you create a following and people who are interested in the games you create, and hopefully they will then buy your project. As I mentioned before, this is actually the final video in this video series. On behalf of Cool Studios, to wish you all the very best in your games development journey.